I felt in so many ways, like at the time, like I was fighting for my life. Like that year, we were trying our very best to only the people that were on my team. It was like a family, like we were so tight. We had built a culture of such trust and such intimacy in our team that losing even a single person was like, it felt like losing a limb. And we had such a sense of like kind of responsibility for them. Like we're like, I'm not going to let somebody go until I know that they've got something else that is lined up and they're ready to rock.
Welcome back, folks, to another episode of the Entrepreneur Circle, a very special episode of Entrepreneur Circle, and special in that I believe my guest is my first filmmaker to the show, because typically, as you guys know, Entrepreneur Circle, we like to highlight, small to mid-sized business owners and their journey and their life and how they help and serve others. But in this case, we have a fusion of the two, because not only is he a writer-director, but he also is an entrepreneur and has businesses and has all the things and all the stories that he's going to share and the wisdom and experiences, wins and losses, so that we can kind of learn from his mistakes, as they say. And I'm really excited about this conversation. We have the writer and director of Triumph of the Heart. Welcome to the show, Anthony D'Ambrosio.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, let's try to do the whole episode.
The whole thing in an Italian accent. That would be really fun.
What's the matter? Okay.
That would definitely shake things up. That's for sure.
I'm sure 30 seconds in, the majority of my audience would be like, yeah, I'm going to go skip.
Yeah.
Listen to the Rogan Mel Gibson episode. Why are we listening to this guy? But yeah, brother, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the willingness to share and be vulnerable and unpack all this stuff. So if you're familiar with my show, for those who have been on this journey with me, they know this first question is near and dear to my heart. And that is, what was an aha moment, eureka, in your life that caused a major life change in your personal or in your business life?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because there are so many different ones that I could give. I think that one of them, because we're sort of talking in some way about the filmmaking journey, I think this would be an interesting one to pick out. And that is, leading up to the pandemic, I had founded a nonprofit community that was a podcast, Facebook group, turning into events and summits and lots of different design thinking course type things. And it was very, very successful. Many thousands of people that were a part of it. It was making a pretty large impact inside of the faith world that I come from. And I was also working on a agency that was reimagining the brands of lots of enterprise level organizations, startups, nonprofits, et cetera, and doing a lot of branding, brand identity, et cetera. And all of that had allowed us to build up a pretty sizable team, and it was looking like it was going to be the first year where my brother and I, as partners in both of these, were actually going to be able to bring home enough money to really feel like, man, this is the reward, for all of those 8 years of slaving away and eating ramen noodles to be able to get to this point, right? And then the pandemic hit, and all of those things, all of the cash flow, all of it was really tied to things that were in person, and all of it dried up. It was like a very, very intense moment. And I guess the eureka that came to me was that because I had built this very hungry beast, with employees, et cetera, we had $100,000 of overhead every month that we had to be able to cover with our sales and subscriptions and all that. And it was a very, very stressful, very intense thing. And I'd always wanted to do film, to do very creative, big shots at big projects that I knew no one else would take. If I was like asking for permission from like a client or something, like, hey, let me, make a feature length film about Maximilian Kolbe, put like 400K down on this and invest, like that's not going to happen through my agency. If that's going to happen, it's going to be 100% through my own efforts. And I guess I just realized that I wasn't willing to let go of the things that I was doing that I had built, that I wanted to do at one point, but that were not central to where I wanted to go and where I really felt like God was calling me. And I guess as the dust was settling during the pandemic and we were having to let go of people on our team, in the pain of that, I was actually feeling a certain level of gratitude for the emptying that was almost forced upon me, because I couldn't take the courage to make the decision to wind all that stuff up by myself. It was too important, and I was too connected and attached to all of it. But I needed to let go of it if I was going to be able to have this renaissance in my life that I'm going through now, which is moving into film and taking some of these really big, risky shots with making movies that nobody else has made before.
Wow, dude. So what I'm hearing is you had this wildly successful agency. You're reaching heights, responsible for a lot of people and putting food on their tables and helping their families. And then in 2020, sort of the silver lining in a sense, and not, necessarily in a monetary level, I see it as a divine hand to help you and inspire you to take the step into your passion. Because you would, it sounded like you were saying, you wouldn't have done it otherwise. Like if 2020 didn't hit and everything dried up and the business was suffering and or getting more and more challenging, like you would have, right now you'd be doing it still.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, right? Exactly.
And
I mean,
this movie wouldn't have been made.
Yeah. I'd always imagined, as we get better margins and we'll get a little bit more time, and all of a sudden I'll be able to take a part of my team and kind of dedicate it to making these films and stories that I know that we're sort of called to make. And as soon as I would start sort of moving in that direction, every time there would be a crisis with the client, or we'd lose a contract and I have to go out and kind of kill something else and then bring it to the table. And so it was just this treadmill of something that I was moderately successful at, but that I didn't love, if that makes sense. And I think that kind of moderate success can be chains for somebody considering what God might be calling them to.
Wow. So as you were going through that and you were considering, I want to get into your mind and life at that time when things seem to be showing itself as like, wow, this is not going to work. I don't know when this 2020, all this stuff is going to fade away. Mm-hmm. And then now you had to potentially pray and seek answers. I'm like, dude, because that is scary, dude. Because I don't know how much filmmaking you were doing prior to that, short films, testing the waters, building that muscle. But it had to be scary to just say yes. So can you walk me through that process?
Yeah, the fear is the fear of the unknown, the fear of am I going to fail? These are all, I think, absolutely core fears to the entrepreneur's journey in general. And they were certainly there for me at that time. I was I was really reaching for a lot of things in that moment. I started, in order to deal with the fear and the anxiety that I was feeling, I ended up starting an amateur/pro boxing journey that I vlogged as I was trying to deal with in some really physical way, what I was kind of feeling inside as I was making this big change. But I think that I, in general, had this sense that God had always been moving me to write, to do something very creative. And at the same time, it had always seemed like the most risky thing to get into, right? Writing, film, to try and make your money out of those things is perhaps inadvisable. perhaps don't ever do that unless you really know God is calling you, because it is quite a risky thing. And I think that I knew at that time, though, that I had to do it. It was just like, if I don't write this script and make this film before I die, I will have failed in some major way in my life. And I was just, in the suffering and in the fear, I was really being called to a subject matter that helped me to process those things, which of course was the story of St. Maximilian Kolbe, who died in Auschwitz.
Yeah. First off, I've seen the movie. And when it does come out, because we're going to talk more about it in a bit, what a powerful movie. And anyone who's listening to this, you're getting to know, alongside with me, Anthony's story. But yeah, Maximilian Kolbe's story is one to definitely pay attention to and check out. And I do actually, since we're talking about this, how did St. Maximilian Kolbe's story inspire you in your life? And what are some of the parallels that you found that really just hit you?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and I think anybody that is drawn to, creative entrepreneurship, whether that's, in film or in some other artistic expression, the work that you're doing creatively is it's being inspired by and teaching you a lesson that you have to learn. It's coming from the stories that you're drawn to telling, or the images that you're drawn to creating. In some way, they're little windows into your own soul, into what God is doing in you, or that you need to learn. And for me, that lesson was very much about suffering. Maximilian Kolbe was a man who suffered very well. And, I was somebody that was struggling a lot with many different sorts of suffering, the loss of my business, the loss of other things. I was also struggling with a health issue that had been kind of a chronic Achilles heel for me in my life, that in moments of stress would just pop up and create a sort of whirlpool of problems for me, because it would cause me to stop sleeping. Later on, we found that was a mold infection, that was just a chronic mold infection that had spread throughout my body and was doing all sorts of things to mess with, serotonin and different hormones for sleep and for mood and things. All that to say, the suffering that caused in my life would lead me to lots of sleepless nights where I just felt very helpless. Anybody that struggled with sleeplessness probably knows, as you're awake and no one else is awake, and you realize every hour that I'm up still means that tomorrow is going to be more and more and more difficult. And if this goes on for many days in a row, the sense of desperation and pain and emotion kind of crops up and presents more and more psychological pressure. And so if that's going on for many months or even years, as it was in my life, I really needed something that would help me during those times that I was up to process the resentment towards God that I had, the sense of, self-pity that's so easy to kind of latch onto as you experience suffering like that feels rather meaningless. And I was really having to answer the question of why go on? Why live in the midst of such helplessness? And Kolbe's story was one that felt like it was kind of drawing me. It was saying, there's answers here. This man, in his holiness, not only was he able to live in some way a meaningful and purposeful life in the midst of the most terrible torture, darkest place on earth, but he was also able to bring other men who were condemned to death with him into that sort of place of peace, in such a way that a brotherhood was formed and sort of the pain and sting of death was fended off in the midst of their terrible suffering as they starved together for 14 days. And as I realized that he was able to bring these other men kind of along with him in that journey, I was like, maybe he can bring me, and that was what led to writing the script that that I was able to develop for the film.
Wow. Yeah. So, man, a lot to unpack there. I mean, I think that his story, for sure, is such an inspiration. Hence why he's a saint. And for those who don't know, Saint Maximilian Kolbe, can you sort of like give that broad stroke on his life and in particular the slice that you took to highlight in your movie?
Right. Yeah. St. Maximilian Kolbe, he was an entrepreneur. He was one of the first Catholics to build a media conglomerate. He was a engineer, and he even helped to invent technology to help with the being able to print the huge amount of magazine subscriptions and newspaper subscriptions that they had at the time. I think he had over 1 million subscribers to his newspaper before the war. And so he was well known in Poland for this, one of the more kind of powerful figures in media at the time in that country. And when the Nazis were kind of coming in, they saw him as a threat. They brought him into Auschwitz. At the time, they were trying to sort of destroy Polish identity, and were doing so through targeting the hierarchy as well as leaders in either the army or politics or business. They were bringing all of them to Auschwitz, along with Jews and other persecuted people groups. But at this time, it was really supposed to be, we're just going to dehumanize and demoralize the culture of Poland so that we can, I guess, reset the bone in the way that we want to create as the Third Reich and kind of enslave the Polish culture, make it a suburb of Germany, if you will. And so he was brought into Auschwitz, and during a particular day when a prisoner went missing, they would do this very cruel thing where they would bring all of the people from that person's bunkhouse together and pick 10 men at random to die of starvation, to sort of communicate their responsibility for telling on and preventing escapes. And one of the men who was selected cried out, I have a wife, I have children, like, please don't pick me. And Maximilian Kolbe stepped forward and volunteered to take that person's place in the starvation bunker, which itself is a very amazing, heroic act. And for many people who know his story, that's kind of where the story ends. And people know that he died and survived probably for a long time. But what they don't really understand is the implications for that to the whole camp, that this in some way, these men would have been expected to die within a couple of days of each other. The sorts of things that would happen in these starvation cells would have been cannibalism. People would be turning on each other. And it was a very nasty, nasty, nasty way to die. And what Maximilian Kolbe did was he went into this cell, and the other 9 men who were in that cell with him, he led them in prayer, in songs. He created a brotherhood with them that sort of emanated out into the rest of the prison, as other groups and cells picked up their songs and their recitations of poetry and their prayers. And ultimately, as people would walk by this prison, they would hear, instead of screams and all the sort of terrifying things that would be normally coming from the cell while Kolbe was there, it was peace. It was like walking by a chapel and hearing, or a cathedral, and hearing the sort of reverberance of holiness and of beautiful, like, humanity taking root in a place that it wasn't supposed to be. And this saved the lives of thousands of people who otherwise had forgotten their humanity in Auschwitz. And so the eyewitness testimonies, of course, brought this story forward, and he was eventually canonized a saint. But he was able to survive for 14 days with these other men, and was eventually executed by the Germans because they were causing such a ruckus from inside of that cell. So it's a really beautiful story of humanity holding on to itself in the midst of great and grave persecution.
Yeah. I mean, the power of hope and prayer in situations that are just dire, you don't want anyone, your worst enemy, to experience what they experienced. And the ability for you, and I'll just share it because I don't want to give away too much, even though you shared the story, but I mean, You do also have to kind of prepare, because I remember when I was given the screener, and I didn't watch it right away, dude. I had to mentally prepare myself,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I knew I was going to be a fly on the wall. Like I knew I was
Yeah.
going to be in that cell with them, just from what I heard of the movie, and I was like, okay, tonight's the night. Like I was, I was preparing. So I do want to forewarn, like anyone who, I highly recommend jumping into the film when it is officially released. Yeah, it's a journey for sure. It's an experience, because you do create that, and yeah, just wanted to honor you and your work there, man. So thank you for that.
Yeah. What was moving about it to you? Like, what did you find to be?
I mean, those songs, like you said, the prisoners outside who started singing with them. I don't want to give away a lot, unless you don't mind, but there's one graphic scene that I can't share here, but it's rough, dude. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's a rough scene. I mean, you mentioned cannibalism, which I wasn't aware of. But it was on that level where I was just shocked. I was like, what? I mean, but I could put myself in that place, because throughout the journey of the movie, it's not like that's the first 3 minutes. Like, you get the desperation, you get the hunger, you understand when it starts raining and how they capture the rain to just like get a drop of water. I mean, there's so many instances of human need, basic human need, shelter, water, food, that we take for granted. And then what the movie highlights in such a powerful way is when that's taken away from you, then what's left? Like, what are you going to do? And then you kind of see what these men do. And this is the best case scenario, right? Like you said, because there's other scenarios where people were put into that position and the worst of humanity comes out.
Right.
But in this case, we actually see the best in the worst case scenario.
Right.
So I hope I shared without sharing too much.
No, that's great. Yeah. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
There are definitely some
But it
brutal
is,
scenes, but
I'm getting chills just thinking about the movie and what it did for me, especially as a Christian and someone who appreciates saints and venerates and, but I want to talk about you. I want to talk about, and we can come back and share with people how they can watch the film, how they can potentially, share or reach out to you as well. But the boxing part, like what? I'm thinking like, so you had this agency. The biggest thing that I felt, because I folded companies as well, was that a good vehicle, tool, therapeutic sort of tool for you to kind of work those things out as you transition from folding a business to becoming a filmmaker and doing this movie? Like, what was that? What was the decision to do that? And what was that like?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I felt in so many ways, like at the time, like I was fighting for my life. Like that year, we were trying our very best to only the people that were on my team. It was like a family, like we were so tight and we had built a culture of such trust and such intimacy in our team that losing even a single person was like, it felt like losing a limb. And we had such a sense of like kind of responsibility for them. Like we're like, I'm not going to let somebody go until I know that they've got something else that is lined up and they're ready to rock. And there was like this kind of commitment that we made as the pandemic was happening. My brother and I had our team together when we really knew things were going south, and my brother like brought everybody together and read the speech, the St. Crispin's Day speech from Shakespeare. Basically it's King, I think it's Richard, that is pulling everybody together and encouraging them for battle. And then we just said, like, our commitment to you is that we're not going to, like, this ship is going to go down. We know that, like, we just lost like 2 different contracts that were worth $1 million that were kind of shoring up our next year. And we know a lot of these other things that are coming through are going to get rolled up as well. And so this year is going to be very hard, and everybody needs to start finding their finding their thing that they're going to get to as their plan B. And in the meantime, we're going to try to innovate and come up with as many things as we can to keep everybody eating until they've got that. And it was it just felt the whole time, that whole year, it felt like we were fighting for our lives. And I knew that I needed a way to like render out in some physical space the internal battle that I was going through. And I think also just there's a way that you need to learn as a man, I think. We have to learn certain lessons of personal growth physically before we can learn them in a more, abstract way, in an interpersonal way. And I really needed to learn how to enter into like combat, negotiation in a way that was a lot more direct, forceful, strong and assertive. And I needed to learn how to not overreact to problems that were kind of coming up because, I just kind of turned into an anxious wreck with all of this that was going on. So yeah, I found myself watching lots of boxing videos on YouTube and Instagram. And I was like, I wonder if this is just me saying like, Anthony, you need to get back into this. I had done it in college and when I was in seminary, and I found my way back to it, I guess, at this time, and was like, all right, God, I'm going to make this deal with you. Like, I'll follow you. And I'm going to allow you to kind of reshape me and recreate me. And, I'm going to need you to give me some opportunities to experience some physical combat to help me to like get through it. And yeah, so I went to a gym, a little warehouse gym in Austin, Texas, and was like, guys, I'd like to take a semi-pro fight, amateur fight, and then like a pro fight by next year. And that's my goal. I'll help you build your brand and do like lots of consulting work for you if you train me like one of your pro fighters. And they did. I got to do the Golden Gloves that next year, and then took on a semi-pro fight, and it was really fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Still doing it, or is it on pause?
No, that was like an all-in thing. At the time, it was like, to compete at a real high, like competitive level, you have to be training 4 to 5 hours a day, and you can't do that in, I guess, and also balance your normal life. So I knew that was going to be for a season, and I kind of vlogged it and did a lot of like fun things alongside the journey to share about it with my friends. But once I had finished the fight kind of on my birthday, I was like, okay, I'm going to get back to normal life here. But I still train, and I still like, I have a group of guys, Catholic guys, that gets together and spars and all that. But I'm not doing the full out, like, going and taking matches on Saturday nights and, all that type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was curious about. If you still had some aspect of it, the training side is good. I guess, any physical activity, that I can imagine that sparring or boxing, that's really great exercise. Listening to Zuckerberg on Rogan's podcast recently, I took a road trip, so it was a lot of Rogan 3-hour podcasts. But yeah, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on Zuckerberg's end of things, it kind of mirrors what you're talking about, and that like
it really
taking those physical hits. What's that?
It really changes you. It really
puts things in perspective.
You so much. Yeah,
for sure.
Really.
Yeah. If you take the stresses of life and business, and then weigh it up against getting punched in the face and getting choked out, I imagine that's you could take anything. It's like, oh yeah, this is not stressful, guys. Relax. So
it just gets you out of your head.
Did it do that for you?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like what I meant by like giving it a physical rendering in a lot of ways, like anxiety, depression, stress, these things on a normal day-to-day basis for an entrepreneur, they're very serious, like realities, especially when you're dealing with big problems, with betrayals, with relationships that have gone south, partnerships breaking up, all the big hard things that that belie the struggles of an entrepreneur. Those will make you go insane if you don't have a way of grounding yourself outside of your mind into your body. And for me, I have like a runaway brain, like anybody that's creative tends to have that sort of problem. And I needed something that was very intense that would just snap me out of that. And getting into the ring, I'll tell you what, you know, somebody there is trying to hurt you, it changes. You don't think about anything else at all. It's just this moment. And I just love it. I love that about it.
Yeah.
It's also very revealing, like watching videos of yourself sparring. One of the most humbling things that you could ever watch.
Yeah. Oh, man. You're maybe inspiring me 2% to get into the ring, but at any level of exercise.
Oh, you should do it. Have you ever done any type of combat sport?
Oh man, no.
Oh, you got to.
Yeah, maybe God's calling now because hearing the Zuckerberg conversation and now having this with you, I'm like, maybe there's a level of but yeah, I
you
know
just got to experience it once, just at least one time. It's an amazing experience, really.
What I will say this, because I'm getting older, I'm in my 50s now, and it's like that testosterone level thing is real. I don't want to inject anything or take anything. I'm just like, this is nature's way. This is God's way. But I am sure, like I remember working out intensely at the gym and feeling like I was like raging, like I was like, oh, is that just naturally happen? Just like, if you could channel that into good things versus like taking it out on others, something like that, man. And then I hear the sleep, like I'm sure it helped you sleep, right?
At first it did. And that was part of the hope. But that was actually right during the time that it was starting to get really bad again. 'Cause I would go through seasons where like ups and downs when it would, but before my big Golden Gloves debut, I think it was like 4 days of not sleeping leading up to it. So I was definitely in a pretty primal state when I went into that match.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it took many more months, I guess a year and a half after that for me to actually find and get my, I guess, mold infection diagnosed. So yeah, I knew that I was starting to get to the idea there. Like, this isn't just like a stress thing. Like there's actually something biologically wrong that I need to figure out, but it took a long time to actually figure out the root.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you figured it out and working through it. I want to spend the last portion of the show on something that I think is happening, and I want to get your perspective on this. Number one, the importance of Christian content, specifically movies in this case. Do you think there's a resurgence? Do you think there's a revival? Because I definitely feel it. Like there's more desire. I've heard through the grapevine that Hollywood is now trying to, now it's like, they're jumping in a bandwagon and they don't care about the content or the Christian movement. They're just like, oh, this is hot right now. Look at Dallas Jenkins and look at all these people. What do you feel about Christian content, movies, and is there a revival and desire to create more of it for a reason?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. I think that there's a whole parallel ecosystem that's being created for the creation, the distribution of content that has to be created, because this type of stuff generally is going to bypass the Netflix, the Amazons, the iTunes. I think a lot of them are becoming interested and willing more so to invest in the faith-based space. The problem is just that they don't understand it, and generally it comes with a lot of baggage that they also are going to enforce that are kind of anti-Catholic. The industry has just been so captured that it's pretty, it's a place where it will be very hard to succeed if you actually want to own and live into Catholic and Christian values. And the sticks and carrots are all sort of set up against Christian, Catholic, faith-based, traditional values type content in the industry. And so I think what's really happening is that people, different projects are starting to see ways to circumvent the industry, which is also a really good thing. I think right now, the whole film world, the content world is being completely shaken up by the advent of streaming, the advent of social media, and the way people are consuming content has changed. People are not going to theaters as much. And that's changing the way that, like, the whole economic process of making film and distributing film. Of course, you have like more tools for indie filmmakers to be able to make things more cheaply. You have more tools for them to be able to disseminate on Amazon or iTunes or whatever without going through the studio system. So you have different ways to innovate and change the industry. And of course, like The Chosen is a really good example of a success that was crowdfunded, that completely bypassed the studio system, and that became this kind of juggernaut of value, both from a perspective of making something really spiritually valuable for a lot of people, but also economically speaking, they've proven that there's a lot of money and a huge demand. And so a lot of people now are just trying to chase that. I'm one of them. The studios, I think, are also trying to figure that out. But I think right now we're kind of in the wild west of a new like gold rush, I guess, for faith-based, conservative, traditional family values type content.
Yeah, that's exciting, man. So yeah, it's not just me in a bubble. It's actually happening, and I think it's the pendulum for sure. Like it's currently on the complete opposite side of things. We canceled our Disney Plus subscription a couple years ago, and I went to my sister's baptism over the weekend for her son, and she had it. I was shocked. I'm gonna give her crap later for it, but I was like, my girls were there, and I was like, oh, they're like, look, Dad, Disney Plus. I was like, let's see what they're doing, dude. It's all witchcraft. It's all dark. It's all weird stuff. I'm like, yeah. Right. No wonder we left. Like, where are all the good, wholesome things? It's all bad. And you don't know it because you're the frog in boiling water until you come out and then you put your toe and you're like, oh, that's hot. So, I'm hoping that at some point everything reverses. The pendulum swinging on the other side is like everything's Christian movies and content, which necessarily doesn't include everybody. But you recognize that change and how drastic things have become over the past several years?
I mean, even from my perspective, right, as a filmmaker, if I want to submit the film that we made to all the different film festivals, pretty much every single one has a whole DEI checklist before you can even submit the film. Like, before they look at the film, they need to know, are you queer? Are you brown? Are you, all of these other questions to say, is this person's voice even worth listening to? Am I even going to watch the video? And I think I think it just tells you this is the state of the industry. Like, what they are looking for is specifically to work with people whose voices are going to be saying things that are, generally speaking, antithetical to like traditional family values. And there's a deep, powerful agenda behind all of the content that is being created, the messages that are trying to be stuffed into them. And of course, that's making it so that like so many people are just, like you said, canceling their subscriptions. They're looking for something else. But unfortunately, there isn't a whole other ecosystem that's been created yet. Like I think if you combine both Netflix and Disney, just those two, they have a over $500 billion market cap, and they've completely abdicated the traditional family values kind of conservative market, which means there's probably $250 billion worth of a market out there that is completely untapped, that's not being served. And as I talk to conservative people, potential investors, et cetera, like one of the things that I'm trying to communicate is that like this is an ecosystem. This is an actual entrepreneurship opportunity that if we don't take, we're going to get left behind again. Like I talk to so many people that are just like, oh, I don't understand film. I don't invest in that. Just, straight off, it's the best way to lose a lot of money. So I don't do film. That's when 95% of Christian, Catholic, conservative investors say when looking at film opportunities. We like tangible things, real estate. We like, mom and pop businesses, roofing, like these, oil, etc. Like these are the things that are like our bread and butter. And it's very hard for us to think about things like the creative industry, media. How do we get into that? And of course, saints like Maximilian Kolbe are perhaps good examples of how in the past, the church has actually been at the sort of tip of the spear when it comes to media because we realize we need it in order to bring forward our own, I guess, perspectives and worldviews. So it's a challenge that we have to get behind and we have to figure out, and I hope to be a part of the solution.
Yeah. I think I'll liken it to, in one of the conversations I heard Rogan talking to, it was Zuckerberg, about the UFC and how Dana White started this thing back in the day and nobody thought it was ever going to take off. It was super risky, right? Like boxing was the thing. And everyone was saying behind the scenes that loved it, man, all we need is like one big wig to come in here and drop billions of dollars on this thing. And it actually happened. Like investors came in and then they invested in it and it exploded. And it's almost the same here in the sense that like there's this desire and need and this hunger for Christian values and content that's going to counter all the nonsense that's being created out there, and people don't realize it's happening, and those who are probably listening to this show. But it's interesting because if somebody were to come in, and I'm sure they're out there, with the blank check to like say, hey, all of you guys, let's go, let's get on the boat and let's create this. Don't worry about the cash flow. We'll figure it out.
I mean, that will definitely change a lot of things. I think the other thing is that filmmakers themselves have to change their thinking from being artists to being entrepreneurs right now. It used to be the case where you could be a filmmaker and there's already this whole kind of system out there to where if you get a film funded and you make it, you can just drop it into somebody else's hands and they're going to figure out how to make it economically successful. And you just kind of take a certain amount of cut of that, and then you go on to make the next film. That is not how the industry will work now, at least for those of us who want to do something really different, who want to, break some molds and make faith-based content, traditional family values content for sort of this parallel ecosystem of the, family values world, I guess. And so I think it's both the investment that needs to come in, but also the change in sort of the change in the process and way that films are made. Mine, for instance, we realized that, okay, if normal period piece films are made for $40 million, and we're trying to serve an ecosystem that doesn't have a distribution, like consistently, we're not distributing films to the faith-based world that are doing, $40 million in the box office. And really, like, in order to make their money back, they would have to be doing more like 120 million in the box office, the way like margins work and everything, and everybody getting their cut. Just to make their money back, they would have to do something like that. That is not an economic vehicle that will be successful. That's how much money Cabrini cost, for instance. If we want to be able to make something, build a different kind of ecosystem, we have to figure out how to do stories that are really powerful, but that maybe cost a fraction of that. So my movie cost $400,000 to make, which is a tiny, tiny, tiny amount comparatively. And it means that even if we have a box office, I guess, flop compared to like what, Cabrini would do or something like that, we will still make our investors money, 4x the investment that they brought in. So because of the way that we approached it, wrote the story, crowdfunded it, did this whole kind of grassroots thing, we're able to work in a way that was really innovative, that changed, I think, the way that movies and Catholic films, especially Christian films, will be made once the movie is successful and people kind of see what we were able to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think that it's necessary for someone to kind of lead the charge and then experience what worked and what didn't, and then create the playbook. So I'm sure it'd be super interesting to chat with Dallas Jenkins and like the struggles that he had getting it off the ground and then funding it and then like leaving Angel Studios and all the things that happened. I'm sure he could write a book to hand over to us and say, hey, this is what worked. Do it, rinse and repeat. Do you think that you'd be able to put something together, like an outline of like, it worked for you, now you can help others, kind of like, hey, let's do this together. Let's just follow this playbook.
I mean, we really are standing on the shoulders of giants with our film with them. I mean, our producer, she was trained on the set of The Chosen, and many of the people from The Chosen were involved in mentoring us through the process of the making of our films. So you can probably see, even and looking, if you watch the story, you can probably feel some of the DNA of The Chosen in our film as well. We're a lot more intense and kind of grittier, but that same sense of like camaraderie and buddy love is all there. I think it's also the crowdfunding approach. We're going to make something that gives people a taste of what we want to do, gives them a vision, and then we're going to run a crowdfunding campaign to just test it and see if there's people out there that really want to help. And that kind of, like involving a community in the process of the creating in the film really, really has a powerful effect on its like economic viability, because then you have all of these other happy things that come along with it as it's getting out there. For instance, during our crowdfunding campaign, a guy who has a studio in Hollywood that's Catholic that just really, really wants to start working on things that are meaningful to him and to get out of kind of the grime and muck of that world, came to us and was like, hey, we will do all of the sound mixing for you for, if it would normally cost somebody $200,000 to work with us, we'll do it for 20, and we'll lose money on it, but it'll be a really meaningful thing for us our studio to get to work on. Things like that only happen because you're already kind of out in the world and you're like enlisting a community that feels a sense of ownership over the film. It creates these really serendipitous encounters that make, making the film possible without all of the same sort of investment that you would have to do if you're going through the studio system. So yeah, lots of different things that we learned from Dallas and from watching the success of The Chosen that we used in the creation of our own strategy.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, and it's working, and hopefully continue to work. How can we continue to love and support what you're doing? What are you looking for that we can potentially put out there now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a couple of things right now that we need. The first is we need prayers, and if anybody is inspired by the problem that we're trying to solve, if anybody out there is like, I'm so done with Hollywood trying to continually stuff this terrible agenda down my throat and the throats of my children, I want to see some other people succeed. Just get in touch with us. Go to our website, and there's ways that you can get involved, whether it's through volunteering to help spread the word about it, or bring a screening to your city before we do the full release of the film. Or if you're somebody of means and you have $5,000, $10,000 of kind of tithe money set aside, you could invest in our funding for doing the release of the film for a potentially like very good profit. So there's a lot of ways that somebody can get involved and help. But the most important thing is just kind of find your way to us and tell us who you are and say, hey, I whatever it is, God was nudging me to help you guys get across the finish line here.
I love that. Thanks for sharing, dude. What's the best website that people can be directed to?
Yeah. triumphoftheheart.com is the best place to go to find out, what we're doing and what we're up to. You can also find me at the Dambro on Instagram, just Triumph of the Heart on Instagram as well.
Yeah, love it, dude. Well, thanks for sharing. Thanks for going a bit deep, and I'm looking to continue the conversation. Looking forward to your next work and all the other projects that you have in your mind that are going to come to fruition. I for sure will continue to pray for you and your team and just Christian content as a whole. I do see the revival and I feel it. I'm super excited by it, and I want to be a part of it as well. So thank you. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Yeah, many blessings to you, and looking forward to hearing your next podcast as well. So thanks so much for your good work, and we'll look forward to meeting each other on the road to happy destiny.
Yes, let's do it.
Yes.
All right. Brother.
Okay. Many blessings to you.